This is part 7 of my series on my Engage model railway project. Previous parts provided an intro to the project and my background with the railways and covered initial setup of the baseboard, selection and laying of tracks, some initial scenic items including Metcalfe and ratio kits, a tunnel built from foam sheets, a review of my LMS and LNER rolling stock, building a hill from foam sheets and vegetating it, and building a Metcalfe card kit of signal boxes, and building and painting a P&D Marsh white metal kit of a 1931 Bedford bus. This part deals with naming the main station on the layout and creating a backing scene to create more of a feeling of the layout being set in a landscape, and to hide room clutter when taking photographs. This part deals more with real-world railway history than actual modelling activity, though there certainly is some modelling. I decided after some thought to call the main station on my layout Coalville. Coalville Station is somehow an ideal name for a station on a layout focusing on historic steam operations, but the name is certainly not fictional. Coalville is a very real town in Leicestershire near where I grew up, and several of my relations lived in Coalville, so we used to go there quite regularly for visits. Coalville also has a significant place in railway history. The real Coalville station was on the Leicester to Burton-on-Trent railway, which started out as the Leicester to Swannington railway and is actually the oldest railway in Leicestershire and one of the oldest steam locomotive operated railways in Britain. When the 16 miles of the Leicester to Swannington railway were opened in 1832, those were 16 out of only 100 miles of loco-powered railway in the whole country. This is the map of the original line. And here's the full line as it later existed. The first part was built under the direction of George Stephenson himself of rocket fame in the 1830s, and the line was extended to Burton-on-Trent, famous for its breweries, under the direction of his son Robert Stephenson. Note that the line in this map running from Leicestershire to Loughborough is part of the original Great Central Railway, which came under the LNER after amalgamation and is now reopened as the Great Central Heritage Railway. The Burton line is also apparently the line on which my Uncle Peter, whose real name was Ralph, died when he went up to help his firemen shovel coal down from the tender back in 1961 to British Railways. The line was closed to passenger traffic in the 60s, but was not torn up and is still there being used for goods traffic currently. Originally set up as an independent line to serve the collieries, the line became part of the Midland Railway in 1845 and was extended to serve the breweries in Burton-on-Trent and to join up with the rest of the Midland network. Here's a picture of Coalville Station in the Midland Railways days. And here's another from the roadside. Here's a ticket from Swannington to Coalville from 1907, fare 1 penny. Here's another picture, presumably from the Midland days. Note the old-style signal, the level crossing, footbridge, and blurry folk who were moving as the exposure was taken. Here's a view from essentially the same position with the level crossing gates closed and a raised signal box has now been erected. And another view from the same area with the level crossing gates, another view from the level crossing with the gates closed across the station to the station building and the platform. In 1924, the station was actually renamed from Coalville, which it was called previously simply Coalville, to Coalville Town. This was to distinguish it from the newly opened Coalville East Station. And here is an actual station name board. Of course, this is from British Railways, not Midland or LMS, as the double lozenge style was a very recognisable trademark of British Railways. Just to clarify the dates for this railway, from 1832 when it opened until 1845 it was the independent Leicester to Swallington Railway. From 1845 to 1923 it was part of Midland Railways. From 1923 amalgamation to 1948 nationalisation, it was part of the London, Midland and Scottish. After 1948 it was part of British Railways and then Britrail until privatisation, and apparently now there's actually a feasibility study currently underway as to whether this line, amongst others, might usefully be reopened to passenger traffic. This is the small Coalville East station, the opening of which necessitated the renaming of the main Coalville station to Coalville Town. Here are a couple more stations on the line. This is the end of the branch at Burton-on-Trent. And this is Kirby Muxloe, still back in the Midland Railways days, I would imagine. Here's a view of the crossing and signal box end of the Coalville station, probably after the closure to passenger traffic in the 1960s. And in contrast, here is a view of the station on a busy day, likely after the Midland was amalgamated into the LMS. This is the end of the station in BR days, but you can still see the Midland Railways logo in the brickwork at the top. And here is the station after closure to passengers, with the platform now gone. I'm not quite clear what's going on in this picture, as there seems to be a great deal of activity at the station, though it's not actually open. Not normally, anyway. In the background you can see the Coalville sheds, which were active for many years. Here's a view of the Coalville sheds in their active days. Here's a Midland Johnson Class 2F at the Coalville shed, presumably back before 1923, although I'm not sure. The sheds did have a turntable for turning engines. I thought this was a rather charming little sideline. This is the Mental Lane East signal box. And here's its companion, Mental Lane box, in its active days, with the signalman looking out of the window. And here's another colour view of the Mental Lane box after it was, I think, disused. Certainly after the station had closed to passengers. Finally, on this little history tour, here's an example of the LMS station signboard at Barden Hill. Barden Hill was the next station along the line from Coalville in the Leicester direction towards Leicester. I couldn't find a picture of an actual Coalville sign from the Midland or LMS days. I decided to stay with Coalville rather than Coalville Town for the station on my layout. And here are the signboards I created on my PC, as previously discussed for the Scraptoft station. I stuck these printed signs onto a pair of white metal LMS station signs from P&D Marsh after first painting the white metal to simulate wood. These signs were then placed on the main platform of the station. I still need to make signs for the other platform. In fact, I was just doing a little bit of work on that now. Next, I wanted to try to make some sort of backing scene to put on the far side of the layout behind the main station, so as to give more of a feeling of the layout being set in a landscape and to hide the room clutter which appears in all these pictures. I searched around for good scenes that might be reasonable as a background to Coalville Station. I managed to find a picture of one of the Coalville collieries, actually with a railway line going through it. Obviously this is not actually the background to the real Coalville station, but it's as close as I'm going to get. So I cropped this picture to make a strip of just the background, and printed and blew it up printed it on 12 sheets of letter-size paper on my old colour printer. Unfortunately, the printer's seen better days, so the colours didn't come out too well, but still it's better than nothing, and the best I could do for the moment. I trimmed the top and left margins off each sheet of the printout, and then glued the sheets onto dollar store foam board using white glue. The backing was made of 2 sheets of foam board, with a piece from a 3rd sheet across the join at the back. Legs to raise the scene to the appropriate level for the layout were made from pieces of the 3rd sheet of foam board. The result's certainly not ideal, but it is better than nothing. Obviously, it would be nice to have something bigger and better quality. Photographed at the right angle in the right light, it doesn't look too bad. Unfortunately, the printout is glossy and uneven because of the glued joints, so it doesn't show up well in flash photos. It looks much better just with the softer room light. It's also not big enough to go along the whole back of the layout, so to get a continuous background you have to shoot from the right angle. But still, it's nice to have a bit of the real Coalville on the layout. Here's another shot taken during the upgrade of the yard with the Cato turntable before the turntable was weathered. And finally another shot showing the whole board with its edges. Next up in this series, a video covering the installation and weathering of a Cato motorized turntable in the yard area.